Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today we had the patch notes for the upcoming patch 3.16.1 previewed, and then immediately the patch went live. Pretty much before anyone was able to read much of these patch notes at all. There was within an hour or so of this note going up, the patch notes actually went live as well. So originally the post said by the end of this week, maybe early next week, we're planning to deploy this patch on PC, which contains several bug fixes, and that it will be released on consoles soon afterwards. Then, as I say, it went live today. Now, when it went live, there were a number of bugs with it, particularly affecting players who access the game through Steam. So if you have the Steam Path of Exile client rather than a direct GGG one, then this may be a buggy release. You might just want to sit out for a couple of hours until things fix themselves. But let's go through the patch notes themselves and discuss what's in them. They're split between improvements and bug fixes, but in practice, there's actually quite a big blurring between the two of them. And at least in my opinion, the first two things listed as improvements are unquestionably bug fixes. So firstly, the game was lying to you about your minion hit points if you had a Summoned Reaper. The game will no longer lie to you. That's all that this first line is talking about. If you have a Carrion Golem and a Summoned Reaper, the Summoned Reaper will lower the hit points of your Carrion Golem, and it will say so correctly on the tooltip now. Once your Reaper is up, the tooltip hit points for your Carrion Golem will be adjusted to correctly reflect the lowered hit points that it has while the Reaper is active. Now, the game was previously doing this lowering of the hit points, but now it will tell you correctly that it's doing so. There's been a grace period added when visiting the mine encampment from within the Azurite mine. I believe that this is a response to a high-profile streamer hardcore death, and this is just basically a bug fix in my opinion, because it seems intuitively obvious that once you get to the mine encampment, you would get a grace period. You normally would on anywhere else that you would teleport with the mine buttons. And this means that if you have a serious damage over time effect on you, like a bleed or an ignite or something like that, that you can't survive, then getting to the mine encampment is enough to keep you alive. Now, previously, it seems like it wasn't. And there's 3D art has been added for Atsuri's Acuity. Atsuri's Acuity is an interesting set of gloves. It used to be super, super, super powerful. Then there were a number of changes that were made to remove all sources of instant leech from the game, because instant leech was allowing players to create characters that were immune to any damage that wasn't a one-shot. And so Atsuri's Acuity was then nerfed hard. It still was really good after the nerf, but it just hasn't aged well, because at the time it was competing only with the core mod pool on gloves. Then influence mods were added to the game, and initially the Shaper and Elder influence mods were added, and then later on you also saw the Crusader, Warlord, Redeemer, and so on mod pool added to the game as well. Now, the influence mods, particularly the 3.9 ones, the Conqueror ones, on gloves are tremendously strong, and as a result, Atsuri's Acuity has just fallen behind. It's an Uber Atsuri drop, but it's just not something you would call an Uber drop at the moment. That means it's not used very much, and the 3D art won't be seen very much. Additionally, this 3D art does not apply to replica Atsuri's Acuity. I do think that Acuity could do with some higher stats, and whether that just be giving it one of the top-end influence mods, so something like strike skills target one additional nearby enemy. Doesn't necessarily need to be that. Acuity can be used on pretty much any type of crit build, not just attack crits. Something that could then be used to make these gloves solid again. Anyway, that's a side topic there. It's a pity that 3D art will not be seen very much. Now, in terms of the bug fixes, firstly, you could get a character into a broken state that had a wand and a melee weapon equipped at the same time. This has now been fixed retroactively for characters that did that. Their wand will stop providing them benefits until they remove it, and then presumably at that point they won't be able to get back into that broken state again, or if they do, it'll just be like having a melee weapon only with no wand. So this is just a bug fix, something that has always been an unintended thing you could to set up. Fix a bug. Well, this one here is listed as a bug fix. I actually think this is a quality of life downgrade, and I'm not impressed with this change, although it is a very small one. It's not something that's going to come up very often. But if you have a Scourge map that has rare Scourge monsters drop an additional stack of simulacrum splinters, And you also got the Delirium Mirror in that map. Then while you were in the Delirium Mirror, the splinters would be sort of saved up, just like any other splinters, simulacrum splinter drops that would have come during that Delirium encounter, and then they drop at the end of the Delirium encounter when the mist vanished. Now they're going to drop at the time that you kill a rare Scourge monster. Like, I can see one situation in which this is better, and that'd be if you are running public parties and running Scourged maps with the Delirium Mirror, but that's a pretty niche case. And I'm saying this as someone that likes to run public parties. I still think that this is a really niche case that's not going to come up very often. I don't think that this improves the game in any way, shape, or form, and I think the old functionality was just better. It's like the way that when you complete a Breach Stone nowadays, all the loot drops at the end. This should just be done for Delirium encounters as well, whether or not they're interacting with Scourge map mechanics and things like that. So yeah, I think that this is actually a drawback. It still is. It's not going to be something that's going to impact players very much because it's a rare combination of effects. You know, both having the Delirium Mirror, which you can't force onto maps this league, and being in a Scourge map with that exact quite precious mod. So it's not going to happen much, but when it does, it's going to be frustrating. Fix a bug where the laboratory map boss could become inaccessible if the final level was used during a Scourge encounter. This, however, is a huge improvement. The laboratory map boss is the laboratory map is one of the worst tile sets in the game. It has no real pull to it. It doesn't seem to have any good divination cards. It doesn't seem to have much in the way of pack size at all. It's got a lot of backtracking. Basically a really bad map, and the fact that you could you could brick your map while you were in it by doing something that didn't feel like it was a mistake. That was just frustrating, and it's a good thing that this is fixed. Fortunately, the 2 times I've done laboratory map exactly twice this league, and I'm not intending to do it again because it's such a bad tile set. But the 2 times I did it, once for Atlas bonus, once for Awakening bonus, I didn't encounter this, but I'm just glad that it's fixed for everyone else. Now, this is the big fix. This is probably the most important change in this league. Fix a bug where Elemental Overload was not working with traps, totems, mines, and secondary projectiles of some skills such as Cremation and Molten Strike. This is a huge improvement for builds that might consider not scaling through non-crit means, and especially for, like, whilst it's an unusual decision to go non-crit on, say, a Hierophant that's using totems like Freezing Pulse totems or something like that, the fact that the option is there is just all upside. Elemental Overload was nerfed pretty hard this league, but it's still good, and this is going to solve a lot of problems for players that want to try going Elemental Overload on totems. Next up, there's the fix a visual bug with 20% chance to impale on hit granted by Physical Mastery. So this was not being displayed in the character panel. If you have this allocated, what you should do now is go and check your character panel and check what your chance to impale is. It may be that you might have kept this allocated thinking, oh yeah, this is taking me, let's say that your character panel was showing 101% chance to impale before the patch. You might have been thinking, oh yeah, this is taking me from 81% chance to impale to 101%, so I need to keep it. But it actually was taking you from 101 to 121 all along, and so doing nothing. Just go and check it if you've got it allocated, check your chance to impale, and if it turns out that you're something like 95% or more without this, then just unallocate this. Fix a bug where, after dying, Survival Secrets Unique, Profane Chemistry Notable Passive, and Necromantic Aegis stopped working upon your death. So these 2 lines are basically the same thing. This is a fix to 1 Keystone, 1 Notable, and 1 Unique item, and something where these were breaking upon character death sometimes. That's now being fixed. There's a change that's been made here that may initially look like a nerf, where Link skills have lost the ability to target totems. However, I actually think this is a buff. Now, a reason for this is that Link skills are something you do not want to hit the wrong thing on, because you will get killed by it, and you certainly don't want to hit a temporary minion with it, such as a totem. Given that you are taking a minion defense cluster in order to get a minion defense mastery, such as Link skills can target damageable minions, you're unlikely to be specialized in totems, and so this is going to be a situation where, let's say that you're a Carrion Golem build, you can now cast a Link skill on your Carrion Golem, and not have to worry about accidentally misclicking and hitting your decoy totem, assuming you also use that skill or some other totem that you might have been using. And those being like hitting a link skill on a timed minion is a really bad mistake. It's something that can easily get you killed, and this just reduces the chance of it. I'm assuming that if you're playing a build that is linking to a minion, you probably aren't using timed minions like summon skeletons anyway, but totems are timed minions as well. Fix a bug with the Harvest Reforged Defense modifiers. I hadn't seen this come up, and I've used that craft a bit, but any bug fix like that is welcome. Fix a bug where Temporal Rift would have to be reactivated on logging out. Welcome quality of life improvement there, something that really should have been fixed earlier. Fix a bug where some veiled modifiers on Kana Kulamak were not having the magnitudes increased. This is important. Like, Kana Kulamak is a powerful piece of endgame kit, and it's one of the things that pulls people towards the Katarina fight. And so having it be broken as it was for all of 3.16.0 is a bad thing. I'm glad to see this fixed. Fix a bug where some modifiers were missing the attribute tag. This matters for exactly 3 things. There's the attributes fossil, the critical fossil, and the tangled fossil. So I think that I'd have to have a look at every single thing that has the attribute tag, and I don't have a list of what used to have the attribute tag, so it's difficult to actually be certain what the changes are. But I'm assuming that this will mean that some things that previously were not blocked by the... Like, this is essentially a buff to the attribute fossil, a nerf to the critical fossil, and a sort of change without being a buff or a nerf to tangled fossils. Fix a bug where the chance to suppress spell damage per frenzy charge modifier on legacy Darkrai vectors was not functioning correctly. Now, this is welcome for the small number of people that simultaneously play standard, own a legacy Darkrai vectors, and are using that legacy Darkrai vectors. This is a welcome change for them, but I think that's a pretty small group of people, and there is a much more important bug in standard that hasn't been fixed. We'll come to that in a sec. Fix a bug where brands could be hidden under the floor in some areas, and the Viscera Cauldron quest item description was correct, so just minor little corrections there. Something that's more quality of life / bug change. The Lord's Labyrinth quest, which is the thing that tells you to go and do the labyrinth, it will now disappear once you've done the Eternal Labyrinth, finally. There'd been a thing where if you hadn't done all 6 of the trials, you would, every time you saw the quest panel on screen, it would be screaming at you, "Hey, have you considered doing the Lord's Labyrinth quest? Have you considered doing all the Trials of Ascendancy yet?" And now that's going to be going away, finally. I had actually started doing every unique Trial of Ascendancy I'd found. Like, even though I was quad ascended, I was actually going back and doing the Trials of Ascendancy as I found them in maps, because I wanted to make that disappear. Because sometimes I do use the quest tracking panel and it was just annoying me. So now I won't need to do that anymore. That is a genuine improvement. Like, that's one of those bug fixes that's important. I fixed a bug where fixed a couple of bugs with MTX, so Synthesis hideout decorations were not being exported properly, and Oblivion Toxic Rain was playing up, and fixed 3 instance crashes. So I mentioned that there's something missing about standard, and that is the map tab issues. Now, I'm not a standard player myself, but this is the sort of thing that is really, really, really a serious issue for a couple of % of the player base. If you're someone that has a well-developed atlas in standard, essentially the game is unplayable right now. If you've got a, well-developed atlas and also a substantial map pool. This is because your map stash tab is in a completely broken state. It'll be filled with maps from the 3.15 era, and if you attempt to add in 3.16 era maps, you can't. Normally, you would address this by using the convert entire tab functionality, but that was broken by 3.16's Atlas Squish. And so there's a really, it's just a really bad state that the Atlas is currently in. And I think that this needs to be fixed. This is something that the game, even though standard's not the most popular way to play the game, the players that play it do deserve to have such a serious bug fixed. Especially if there can be time found to fix things that only affect hardcore players, or things that only affect standard players that have a specific legacy item and that are using them, or only affect players that have, Kana Kulamak or Atziri's Acuity. I think that the standard player base is bigger than those groups, and so they do deserve their serious bug to be fixed. And honestly, I think that needs to be in 3.16.1a. And, if that means bumping off a couple of the things, like the welcome fixes, like the laboratory map boss fix, if it or the Lord's Labyrinth thing, if these were bumped off in order to fix the standard thing first, I think that would be, correct triage for GGG at the moment. The other thing that's missing is that there's no changes announced to Scourge mechanics, which sort of surprises me, but I don't know, maybe it's just the loud voices on Reddit that don't like the current state of the league. Maybe lots of players are using the Scourge Crucible extensively. It seems like over on Reddit, everyone's up in arms about it. Now, I think that the Scourge Crucible is simply more powerful than Varlorbs. It's something that functions like a Varlorb, but has a lower chance of completely ruining the item and has more incremental possibilities to improve it. So for that reason, I'm reasonably content with the state of the Scourge Crucible, but it's all of the loudest voices on Reddit aren't. So I'm not sure what's going on there with GGG, whether they're just going to say, no, we're happy with the state of it. We think it's a powerful reward at the moment. And definitely at the moment, the Scourge League is fountaining out large amounts of currency just from the Scourge monsters. So it feels like, in my opinion, it's in a pretty good place right now. But I don't know whether that's just my opinion or whether other people think it as well. Anyways, I want to leave it there. This has ended up being a longer video than I'd thought for a patch that has a bunch of small things in it. But really, GGG, fix the standard map tab issue. Even though it's not going to improve the game at all for me, but people that play the league aren't the only people that play the game. And also, I think a lot of the people that have disliked the way that the game has been going over the last little while would actually find standard better. And if GGG started marketing standard, it would mean that some of the changes that they make to temporary leagues might not actually need to be made, because people would learn, oh yeah, okay, I'm the sort of player that doesn't like the progress to endgame. I only like playing at endgame. Well, of course I'm going to play standard. Like that's what I think GGG should go for. Whereas people that prefer the progress part and prefer the period where your character is not strong enough to beat Cyrus easily, that sort of section of the player base will then be the ones that they would market leagues to. That's all I got though. May your Varlorbs have interesting results.